Hello and welcome to episode number 82 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk about the hobby that makes us happy, tabletop gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Dan.
And I'm Jim. And today we're talking with Pro Tour winner and game designer, Justin Gary.
All right, we got there. This time it was my fault.
Yes.
Last time it was his fault. This time it was my fault.
I even said, I'm going to mess it up multiple times.
But I was the one who messed it up. All right, before we get into the episode, we need to talk about our sponsor, Amazon Audible. If you head over to our affiliate link, www.audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness, so you can sign up for your free 30-day trial of Amazon's Audible service. Amazon Audible is Amazon's audiobook service, where when you sign up, you get that free 30-day trial, and you get a free book added to your account, which you can use to get any audiobook on the service added to your account. Now, what's even pretty cool is you can cancel before the end of the 30 days if you don't like the service, but you get to keep that free book. What's even better is if you're an Amazon Prime member, you get two free books added to your account. And you can get those added to your account. If you don't like the service, you can cancel before the end of those 30 days. I've got a lot of credits on my account that I need to go in there and use. Like we said last time, Gary V, Patrick Bet-David, some fantastic authors, and Patrick Bet-David's got his list of books for entrepreneurs. Definitely go check all that stuff out. But again, guys, seriously, if you don't have any Gary V stuff, go get that. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, he will give you that daily kick in the rear that you need to just really be your best self. So head over to our affiliate link, audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness. Sign up for your free 30-day trial today. All right, this episode is a lot of fun. I was very excited when I was able to reach out to Justin Gary, and he emailed us back and was like, yes, I will do your podcast.
You know, I was actually kind of nervous when
I
we
was
talked
too.
to him.
I was too.
But like, I kind of did my thing, got us all laughing, got us into a mood, and it was just kind of a lot of fun.
It was interesting. Like you mentioned being nervous, because I was nervous as well, but once we got into the conversation, it flowed. Yeah. It felt really natural. Yep. He's got an amazing career and has an amazing experience in this space. And actually, one of the first questions that I asked, and he just started talking about, I'm like, you just answered like 5 questions that I was gonna ask. So, Justin Gary started Stoneblade Entertainment in 2010, original designer of Ascension, the deck building game series. And today, this episode is airing a few days early because we wanted to make sure we got this out for the launch of the Ascension Tactics Inferno Kickstarter, which launches either today or the next day. I can't remember when this goes live, but the Ascension Tactics Inferno Kickstarter should be live today. So we talk about Ascension Tactics, and really just Justin's entire experience in the industry. So without any further ado, let's get into the conversation for you guys. All right, today we are joined on the podcast by Justin Gary. Justin is the CEO of Stoneblade Entertainment, which he founded in 2010 with their first game, Ascension's Chronicles of the God Slayer. First introduced at Gen Con in 2010, he's also author of the book Think Like a Game Designer, the step-by-step guide to unlocking your creative potential, and has a podcast that he hosts by that name as well. He also has a notable Magic the Gathering career with a win in the 2002 Pro Tour in Houston. Justin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
All right. So I'm very excited to have you. I first heard you talk with Zach and Steven on the Covenant cast, where you talked a little bit about SoulForge Fusion. So I'm pretty excited to have you here. But for our audience, can you give our audience kind of a brief rundown, as brief as you can, I guess, of your tabletop career and kind of how you got started in the games industry? I mean, I know you started young by playing Magic at 17, but kind of what led you to start playing Magic, and then kind of how has that informed your career?
Yeah. So it's been a fun story. So it's varying degrees of nerddom, bouncing from one to another. So I used to play a competitive laser tag league called Laser Storm down in South Florida, and in between rounds of laser tag, people were playing this weird card game. And I was like, what is this? And it's like, oh, this is called Magic the Gathering. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I went to the store and I picked up some cards and I just like brought every card that I bought out of the pack and started playing, which kids these days don't realize. Like the decks they buy are all pre-built and made to work. There was just a random assortment of cards that made no sense whatsoever. Got my butt kicked. Was like, yeah, exactly. So, but got my butt kicked. Was like, oh, maybe I should only play like 2 colors. Okay, cool. Come back the next week. Come back. Go. Okay, all right. Got my butt kicked again. Anyway, I kept that process going for a little while. I discovered it right when I was 16. Then the group that I played laser tag with decided to go to drive up to Orlando to go to the state championships. I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. I'll go with you guys. Win the state championships. Now I'm invited to nationals. Like, okay, couldn't really afford to go to nationals. I actually ran a tournament at my local store to collect the entry fees, to pay for my plane ticket, to fly to nationals in Columbus, Ohio, slept on somebody else's floor, win the U.S. National Championships that year. Then now all of a sudden I'm on the Pro Tour, traveling around the world playing, and that's how I paid my way through college and kind of just got to be a pro Magic player for many years. And then I thought, oh no, I'm that was fun, but I'm going to go do something serious with my life. And so I quit playing Magic and went to law school. I went to New York to NYU Law, and I was miserable, miserable. And so I was like, all right, just because both my parents are lawyers doesn't mean I have to be a lawyer. And fortunately, some of the people I used to play Pro Magic with had started working on a game called Versus System over at Upper Deck. So it was a Marvel versus DC trading card game. And they invited me to come out for a summer to help them kind of develop the game, help break the game, and see what I could do. And I went and worked on it for a little while over the summer. I loved it. And just picturing, stuck in in the law library in the snow in New York versus summer in San Diego working on games. I was like, okay, this is definitely the path for me. Quit law school, flew across the country, figured out, and by the way, just to pause there for a second, like it's actually, it sounds like, fun and easy or whatever, but the skill set of being good at playing games and playing on the Pro Tour is very different than the skill set of how to design and create games. And I had to really deconstruct that and like take my analytical brain and be like, what is this creativity thing people talk about? And I had to it was a very tough process to learn, but that's part of where I end up, kind of deriving the principles for the book and trying to teach other people. Cause once I worked through that, I wanted to make it easier for other people. Anyway, I worked there for a while. I led design the Infinite Crisis expansion for the Versus system. I created the World of Warcraft miniatures game as a lead designer. Eventually became the product manager and brand manager for that, figured out how to do all that stuff. Once I'd kind of gone through that cycle, I decided, you know what, let me give this a shot on my own. Quit, started my own company, launched Ascension, which I just thought was going to be a fun little game I'd play with my friends. Honestly, did not expect it to be that big a deal. And it turned out it was, and we can go into more detail in any phase of this. There's a lot of fun little stories there, but I'm giving the brief overview version. Then I get to that leads to me being at a PAX Dev conference where Richard Garfield is there giving a talk. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go listen to Richard Garfield give a talk because he's my idol and he dictated the course of my life. At the end of the talk, people ask him, hey, what's your favorite game right now? And he said his favorite game was Ascension. And I literally in the back of the room jump up and go, woo! Like literally like a ridiculous child in a crowded group of people. Like just pure, everybody laughs. But it gives me the opportunity afterwards to start conversations with Richard. And it became very clear that we had a very similar design philosophy. We wanted the same things and what our next project was. And that became SoulForge and now eventually SoulForge Fusion. And so along with lots of other fun twists and turns, I've gotten to take this entire full circle ride from random kid picking up a deck of cards to now getting to like work on games on the regular with Richard Garfield and make cool stuff with a lot of other incredible talented people. And so that's my my short version of my story that gets me here.
I'm glad you told that story because I literally have that as one of my questions. I've heard you tell that before, and how did that feel? How did that feel to hear Richard Garfield tell you that your game was the favorite that he's playing at the moment?
It was and is still surreal, right? I mean, there's just the pure kid-like joy of it, like I expressed verbally in the moment. And I've been fortunate to just have a lot of these moments. Like I just still think of myself as just like, I just love games. I like playing games. I like doing, like the fact that I still get to do this for a living is like, I feel like I'm cheating somehow, And so the fact that now to be able to get that kind of recognition and to bring joy to, the person who brought so much joy to my life and and help to craft these experiences has been amazing. Like I've now, have regular like friendships and co-working relationships with other like incredible people who've inspired me, like Jordan Weissman, and created Shadowrun and BattleTech and WizKids and all that, and I've been able to like have this now inspirational effect on other people for whom they started playing my games and now they're playing with, they're designing games on their own, or they're playing games with their kids. That process of being able to connect with others, and it's still surreal. It's something I'm so grateful for, and it's one of the things that just keeps inspiring me to work hard at what I do every day. I mean, again, it's play, it's making games, but it's a lot of hard work to do it well, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Going through all that, it brought me to one word, community. And, community, I feel like it is and can be a buzzword that a lot of people just throw around for we've all got community. But like that story kind of, at least for me, kind of brings it really home. And I don't know, like, to me, it seems like the games industry, the tabletop industry in particular, kind of embodies the word community like to a T. I mean, not to say you can't find community in other industries, because you most definitely can. But I just feel like this industry, I feel like there's just so much more of that feel in this industry in particular than any other industry. Is that something like, would you agree with that statement? And kind of going off of your story there, I mean, kind of, can you touch on just that word community and kind of what it's meant to you?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, so obviously I can't speak to every community out there because I haven't been a part of every community out there, but I definitely vouch that the tabletop community is such a powerful force. And I can speak to it from a couple different angles, right? So there's the one piece of it, which, I started my career as a pro Magic player, right? I made hundreds of thousands of dollars playing card games and traveling around the world. And so one version of this story is, well, obviously you're there because you love the game, or you're there because you want the money. And neither of those things are true. Like, the game brought me in, the money allowed me to keep doing it, but it was the community and the people that what I really cherish. That's why I did it, right? Those are friendships that I formed, bonds that I formed that lasted my entire life. And still to this day, a lot of the people that are in my company now, a lot of the people who I'm closest to are the people that I started hanging out playing games with. And so I know from a visceral, personal level that that's what's important. The same is true, like the connection I have with my dad, where he would play games with me when I was a kid. And I got to take him to come to World Championships in Australia, and we got to go have that experience together, right? We get to have that connection. And then so from that side, I'm blessed and viscerally feel it and know it without a doubt that this community is a part of it. And now I look at it as my job and my mission to build those communities and build those opportunities, really create the space for people to create those communities, right? Because I can't create a community for people. I can create a space that people can fill. And so that is like, and again, that's where you talked about, well, how did it feel to have Richard Garfield tell you he loved the game? And that was amazing. But I also like immediately pivoted to like how it feels to know that I've created a bond between a father and a daughter because they get to hang out and play games of Ascension. To know that I've seen these friendships with people that meet up every couple months at one of the events that we throw, or that are hanging out in our Stoneblade Discord and chatting and building these deep friendships and connections. It's like, that stuff is what makes me come alive, right? So like our mission as a company, right? We have like our kind of motto is like work with awesome people, make awesome things, and help each other grow. And then the core mission of what we do is, we create these remarkable experiences that delight, connect, and inspire people all around the world. And that connection is just at the heart of it. Like, a great game, it's fine. You can play a great game. You can have a great experience. But at the end of the day, you're only going to stick with it. It's only going to become a part of who you are. It's only going to become something that you really remember when you build community around it. So I spend at least as much time focusing on that as I do on any given game mechanic or cool aspect of a specific game.
Yeah, Jim, like it warms my heart to hear stories like that, because this is exactly why Jim and I got together and started Hobbies and Happiness. Like everything you just said was the exact reason that I text Jim, and then we started talking. And the reason we got together was because our game store closed, and we were like, we need this. Like, our community needs this. What can we do to provide this space for our community to continue to grow? So I love hearing that, and it to me it means Jim, that's just affirmation that what we're doing is the right thing. So I love
definitely the correct course.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, when you reached out to me about doing this chat, I looked up your stuff and I saw the vibe that you're putting out there. It was like, yeah, 100%. Like this is exactly the kind of thing that I love to see. And you're literally crafting community. And if you don't mind, I'll go on a little bit of a tangent about this because I think like what it means to be in community now, what it means to create communities now, is very different than what it meant even 3 years ago, right? Even pre-COVID compared to now, it's shifted a ton, right? My company is now 100% remote. So I think about how do I build community and how do I build culture within my company. We have when we launched our first Ascension Tactics Kickstarter, it was right into the COVID and right into the pandemic. And so all of a sudden a tabletop miniatures game, which is about as physical and in-person a thing as you can imagine, is suddenly how do we manage that in the pandemic? And so we built prototypes on Tabletop Simulator. We built a community on Discord. We worked on ways to help connect people that couldn't necessarily be in the same room, or things like with SoulForge Fusion, where we've made it so that every single it's a physical game first, right? We want to let people play games in their stores, but every single deck is one of a kind, algorithmically generated. There's a QR code on it. You can scan it into your online collection. You can play your deck online. And so we have tournaments where you play it online as well as physically, so you can have communities. If your local store closes, if you don't have people around you, you can still have that community and then hopefully eventually build a local community or connect to other communities nearby. And I think those things are critical nowadays because there's no substitute for the value of us sitting around a table and hanging out. And like, there's just that nothing online replaces that, in my opinion, right? Maybe someday we'll all have the chips in our brains but nothing replaces that. But I think it's important to supplement it. I think it's important, like what you guys are doing, right? The community you build through a podcast, the community we can build on a Discord, the opportunities to connect and engage with the things you're passionate about and the people you care about is something that's evolving very rapidly right now. And so it's another really fascinating part of what we mean when we say community.
Yeah, most definitely. So when it comes to Magic, like you were talking a little bit about Magic, but I feel like the game of Magic has informed so much of the card game space, right? I mean, I look at a lot of different card games that are out, right? You've got your own Magic career. I look at Darwin Castle, Rob Dowdery with Wise Wizard Games, Brian Kibler. There's a lot of people that have been out making games, like card-based games, and they have a history in the Magic space, right? I feel like anytime I see a new card game, it's they're a Magic Pro or they've got all this backstory, this background in Magic. I mean, I feel it almost seems like it cannot be understated how much impact the game of Magic the Gathering has had, not only on the card game space, but in the tabletop gaming space as a whole. For you being in the industry for as long as you have, I mean, is that like, do you see that as well, or not really so much?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I mean, you've named all people who I, were teammates with and work with, have worked with over the years directly. Yeah. But it's so there's a couple of factors at play. Right? One, so you mentioned I have a podcast called Think Like a Game Designer where I talk to all the best designers and people in the gaming industry, like just really top talent names. And it's pretty much always one of two things that got them into this industry, and it's either Magic or Dungeons and Dragons. Like those are the two universally like the things that brought people in and got people like hooked on what's possible. And I think there's something and Magic has had is much bigger than Dungeons and Dragons by a good margin. And I think there's a couple of things that came with it, and I think both Magic and D&D have this, which is there's one thing where it says, hey, here's a game, play this game, right? It's in a box, you do what I say and you play the game. But things like Magic and Dungeons and Dragons say, no, here's all these possibilities. You build the game. You build the experience, right? Whether that's building your deck or building your character or building an adventure, right? You're creating a game experience for yourself and for your friends in a way that just wasn't very accessible before that. And I think that's why it's such a trigger point for so many people to become game designers or become hooked to become part of the industry, is because that possibility space just unlocks something for people. And I know that's what happened for me for sure.
So when it comes to card games and board games, okay, I feel like the line between what makes a card game and a board game has blurred over the past decade. For me, I think when I probably think of card game, like intuitively, I just think anything that has a lot to do with cards, right? And to be honest, I think ultimately it doesn't really matter if it's a card game or if it's a board game. I think I think those words or phrases mostly mean something when you're just trying to give somebody an example or a description of what kind of experience they're looking to get into. And I think historically, when most people think card game, they would tend to think a trading card game or a collectible card game. Like for us, like card games are our life. Like we love and enjoy card games. But I'm also finding us playing all these other games that to me are card games, but would be quote unquote considered a board game. Is there a thing that even makes a card game or a board game anymore? I mean, again, I don't think it ultimately matters. I think it is a game. I think it is semantics. But because I was thinking about this last night, and I'm like, you know what? Because I'm a big let's try to define our terms. And I think for me, when I tried to boil it down, I think it only really mattered when I'm just trying to give someone a description of the experience they're going to get when they play this game. So does it matter outside of that? And is that line blurring?
Yeah, so I don't think I mentioned in my backstory that I'm a philosophy major, and so the getting into the definition of these things is really I could go off on a real tangent here.
Perfect.
But no, I mean, it's actually so Wittgenstein is kind of one of the most famous philosophers for speaking about the philosophy of language, and he famously used the word game. Like it's actually impossible to even define what a game really is. And I can, I go into a variety of these things when I teach, what does it mean and what are the relevant definitions? So without going too far down that rabbit hole, yes, the distinctions between card game and board game and, this is a tactical game and this is a Ameritrash, this is a Euro game, right? Every single one of these things is designed to give you a family of associations, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
So it's kind of like Uno. Oh, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like this. So the words, and so you had it exactly right. It's to give you a sense of like, oh yeah, it's like it's a 2-player battling card game. Okay, I kind of got a sense of where this is. Or, oh no, it's a deck building game or a board. Right? Deck building has now become a category. Back when I made Ascension, there isn't a category. It was Dominion and then it was us, right? That was it. And so now it's a chunk, and right, and that's actually these old things that were original and innovative on their own now become discrete kind of units of design that now other things build off of, right? Like I would never have dreamed of making a game like Ascension Tactics 10 years ago. It's crazy. It's there's so much going on because you have to understand all the concepts of deck building and then all the stuff about a tactical miniature game and smashing together. But building it now, almost everybody in the gaming industry understands the basics of deck building. And once you know that, it's very fast to pick up and very easy to do. So we always kind of stand on the shoulders of giants and build on what came before. And so when you're describing things in terms of card game versus board game, you're helping people to understand, okay, where in this sort of soup of possible play experiences are you trying to direct me?
Yeah, because I feel like Jim, like before we started even making content, I was just trying to make sense of stuff for me, right? And now I find myself on the standpoint of, okay, I have to try and explain this to other people, and all I really know is, well, there's cards, so it's a card game,
Right?
It's kind of like. It's kind of like it's all made up and the rules don't matter and the points don't matter. And
exactly.
We're just figuring it out.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, that is really the funny part of it, right? Getting back to the philosophical thing, right? Our whole thing when we play games is we all pretend that there's these things that actually matter to us in order to have these experiences where none of it really matters. Like I'm collecting these little gems and these little things, doing this. It's like, what am I doing right now? Like we all get to play this, sort of we enter this magic space of, all right, we're all going to pretend like this stuff really matters so we can share this experience and craft this experience together. And sometimes people get very, very obsessed with those things that don't really matter. I need those points. I need those gems.
So Magic the Gathering is just putting cardboard on a table and playing pretend.
Pretty much.
Nailed it.
Glad we got it. Glad we
got a professional player of playing pretend.
I like it. All right. So I want to talk about Ascension for a little bit because, I want to make sure we get this in, right? So the Ascension deck building game, okay? At this point, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's about 15 or so expansions to date. Is that correct? Or is there a little bit more?
There are 16 standalone unique expansions, and then 16. That doesn't include collector's editions and promo cards and promo packs and all that craziness. But yeah, quite a bit.
Right. So launched that in 2010. Okay. So what inspired you to create Ascension Tactics and not just another Ascension box?
Yeah, great question. So, this was when I made Ascension Tactics originally, that was coming up on the 10th anniversary of Ascension. And so I knew I want to do something special, right? Something different. Mm-hmm. I've done plenty of Ascension sets. I'll continue to design Ascension sets. It's super fun, but I want to do something different. And prior to, in addition to my love of card games, and obviously the thing I'm most well known for, I also love miniatures and tactical games. Like, I had a Warhammer 40K army when I was younger. I played, the HeroClix. I played Memoir 44. I played like a lot of these tactical games, HeroClix. And I designed the World of Warcraft miniatures game back when I was working for Upper Deck. So I had all of this knowledge and joy and love of tactical miniatures games. And at some point, I think it was Ryan Sutherland was one of my co-designers on the projects, and he is like, well, could we do this? And it's like, oh, that seems crazy. There's no way. And we're just like, all right, let's try. And we tried a bunch of other crazy stuff, which I won't share because I might still make it. But what we found was this was like actually once we got the core hook of it, right? Whereas Ascension, for those that don't know, right, it's a deck building game. You have runes that buy cards from the center row that make your deck better, and then power, which you use to kill monsters, and monsters typically give you points, some kind of instant bonus. So it's like a relatively straight resource conversion kind of game, but with a playing pretend, as you like to put it. But then this was like, instead of just spending power to kill monsters, what if you spent power to command and power up your champions, your miniatures? And that just unlocked so much, because there's this whole interesting new dynamic of how you control territory. We created all different kinds of scenarios and cooperative play and a campaign mode and like all of these things where you can just like either play a basic scenario of 1v1, or you have so many different explosions of possibilities because all the world of a tactical miniatures game is unlocked. And so once we started down that road, we were having so much fun with it. We're like, okay, we're definitely making this. And then not only was it so, it was so much fun. There were so many cool mechanics. We had to cut a bunch of stuff. We had like a dozen different scenarios and 12 different permutations of your campaign and 30 different characters or 40 different characters. And like, it's so much stuff. We had a bunch of stuff we had to cut, which is now, spoiler alert, coming soon in our new expansion.
Awesome. So, I mean, you kind of answered this question, but it was, aside from miniatures, like what sets Ascension Tactics apart from the Ascension deck building game, right? It sounds like it's a lot more than just, we've got miniatures now. It sounds like it's a completely different game just than a straight deck builder.
Yeah. I mean, it's so you're, because you're just changing the victory condition entirely from just like, okay, I just need power to convert, or just the cards I buy are worth points. Now it's the typical scenario. So there's a pre-printed scenario in the box that you just can set up and play, or there's mobile terrain pieces and then a scenarial book, so you can set up different scenarios. But the typical scenario is there are honor shrines you're trying to control. If you end your turn with majority control on an honor shrine, you get honor, you get victory points, and then the first person to get to 30 wins, or whatever the total is, right? And so then you can kill the opposing guys. Of course, you're trying to attack them. You're trying to make you can add tact constructs to your champions to make them stronger. You can give them different movement rates. There's treasures you can pick up around the board to give them secret kind of hidden boosts at the right time. There's different terrain that can slow you down or do damage or do all kinds of different things that make the boards. Just that interplay, right, it's just so much dynamic play. How far away I am, if I'm going to give a guy ranged and be able to attack you or threaten the zone, if I'm able to score more points and I want to preserve this and protect this area versus incurring into yours. There's so much that goes on. Do I want to try to kill your champions, or do I want to try to score more points, or do I want to try to run over here and collect more treasures to use later? Like, there's all this interesting, fun, tactical decision making, and it's just like the coolness of just like the visceral feeling of miniatures and characters all moving around the board. You summon a giant dragon, so you can get like extra miniatures beyond the ones you start with by buying them off the center deck. So certain, like a giant dragon or one of our huge villains can show up. So there's just like all of these cool experiences that can happen there. And then again, that's just the baseline scenario. So if you're playing in the campaign, then there's different branching paths you can choose, and different characters can join your side, and you have these sigils and quests you can complete that upgrade your champions permanently. And there's a whole story to evolve through. So there's so much gameplay. I mean, I've joked about this before. The original Ascension Tactics is literally the most gameplay I've ever packed into a single box ever. Not even close. It's insane how much different play patterns you have available. But Ed, if you know Ascension, you know the basics of deck building, you can pick the game up in 5 minutes. It's that fast and that easy to understand the fundamentals, and then after that, of course, the tactics get in there, right? Because you can have unlike traditional miniatures games where you typically have like a certain point buy, right? You have like 100 points to spend in your army, and you have to kind of figure that all out. Here, it doesn't matter. You just draft you can either be fixed starting characters or just draft your characters. The way we balance it is the more powerful characters cost more power to command. So I could have a giant monster on my team, but he's going to cost maybe 4 power to command, or maybe I want a few smaller guys that are going to be more nimble, only cost 2 power, and I can run them around the board more. And so there's like just an intrinsic balancing element that comes from the value of the deck building, right? And do I want to get more power in my deck so I can command my champions better, or do I want more runes so I can get more cool things so my deck gets better and even more like big late game effects that can transform the game? So there's so much fun, interesting interplay that comes from it. Like it's a real blast to play, and the whole thing, every given scenario takes 45 minutes. So you can play very fast, 30 minutes if you got 2 really fast players. And so you can play it really fast. Even if you want to play a campaign, which could overall take maybe 5 or 6 hours, it's broken up into individual sessions so you can, stop and set up next time. And so I'm a big believer in making sure games are playable relatively quickly. I can't handle like a 3-hour session games anymore in my life. I used to do that, but I just can't anymore.
You touch on, you said Ascension Tactics, like that's the most gameplay you've been able to fit in a box. One of the things that Jim and I have said for a long time about deck building games in general is, and one of the reasons like I love deck building games is every game is different. It's always going to be a different game because there's no way like the tableau or the way you buy cards that changes so many times, and every single time you play, it's going to be a different experience. And for me, like that's one of the reasons I enjoy deck building games, because they're just the experience is going to be so different every single time I sit down and play the game. So that's one thing that I enjoy about that type of mechanic. So.
Yeah, that was the reason I made Ascension in the first place. So like I played, started off, I played Dominion like a ton, right? Hundreds of games of Dominion because I was like, oh, this is really cool, right? In essence, Dominion took a lot of like what you get out of a constructed feeling of Magic the Gathering and like put it into a single box, right? But what I did notice after I played a bunch of Dominion is after I saw the same setup cards, I was like, okay, I know how this is going to play out, right? Yeah. I know what I'm going to do. And now I'm just like running through the simulation, right? And then that started to get boring. And again, not a knock on Dominion. I played it a ridiculous amount. It pioneered the genre. But I'm like, well, how do we solve that problem? And then I think about Magic. If you're playing the same constructed decks against each other over and over and over again, eventually that becomes kind of the same. So what do? You play limited, right? You draft. You pull cards at random. You restrict the number of the card pool. And that's where I came up with the Ascension Center Row with the ever-changing cards. We were the first game to ever do that. And then now, of course, that's become one of the most common ways that deck building games work because it creates that ever-changing experience, which is what you want, right? You want a gameplay that's like, it's the familiar, but each time I have to solve a new and interesting puzzle and have it presented with a new challenge. And so that's where I think something like even just the basic Ascension, right? Even the Ascension Chronicle of the Godslayer, which now we have a 10th anniversary edition of, you can play that for the rest of your life and you're always going to have innovation and always have fun things. But then, it also now is more than 10 years later, I can explore this new space of even more interesting, different kinds of play patterns and different extra mechanics and fun stuff like that.
Yeah. So the board mechanic, for lack of a better term in card games, seems to be becoming more and more popular. Like for me, when I see Ascension Tactics, the first game that I saw that was similar to this was Skytear, where there's a lot of cards, and then now there's a board with miniatures on it. And so now we've also got games. There's Summoner Wars, there's Sorcery, where we're taking the idea we've got all these cards, and now we're also adding this element of a board or grid or miniatures involved. Okay, is something like this like the next quote evolution of card games? Like, or in the case of deck building games, are traditional deck building games going to start going away? Like, is this kind of like going to be the next evolution of the genre, do you think? Or you think there's still design space in the deck building game genre?
The biggest challenge right now, so it's a golden age of card games and board games in many ways, right? There's more great games out there than you could, all the time. It's easier than ever to design and create games than it's ever been. The flip side of that is that it's very hard to break through the noise, right? It's very hard to make a game that people notice and play and it's going to stand the test of time. And when you say, well, is there enough design space for more, just regular quote unquote deck building games? And the answer is, yeah, there's plenty of design space, but are you going to pay attention? Are you going to notice it? Right? How does it differentiate itself so much from Ascension or Dominion or whatever, or any of the dozens of other games that are out there?
Yeah.
And so that's where it gets hard, right? If you don't have, and even for us, right? Even like whatever, like Ascension still sells great, but the 15th set of Ascension didn't sell as well as the first set or the 10th set, right? And but Ascension Tactics, now all of a sudden it's like, hey, this is something totally different, right? And this is something that's really interesting and really got people's attention. And so that's kind of skyrocketed everything back into a new tier, and so I think where you see people, is the connection to, miniatures or a board or a tableau different than is it the evolution? No, it's an evolution. And then there'll be other ones where they'll probably bring in dice. There'll be other ones where they bring in deck building and roll and write, or there's bigger, whatever, right? Like there's a million ways to combine different mechanics and bring something that's new. But I think that's really the key, is not that there's a lack of design space in the deck building world, just like there's not a lack of design space in the trading card game world. It's just, are you going to be able to break the noise and get people to want to pay attention to your game and play it? And very often that requires you to have some clear hook that lets people say either visually or viscerally kind of feel, oh, okay, that's different. I want to check that out.
Well, it's interesting. So where my mind just went when you talk about break through the noise, the first was Marvel Snap and Ben Brode. I know you just had Ben on your podcast, but I think like Ben did a phenomenal job with that, because I felt like for me, anywhere I looked, like I just saw Marvel Snap everywhere. And the first time I saw it, I thought, okay, forgetting that this is Ben Brode, this looks amazing. Like it looks like something that is so much different, and I want to look at it because it looks very interesting to me. And then the flip side, the other thing is is Disney Lorcana. Both of these things is I think they're working with large IPs, right? The Marvel and Disney franchises. Okay. Do you think in order to break through the noise, you need like a large IP like that, or do you just need a good idea? Which I think both of these games and are good ideas. I think they just have the benefit of working alongside a large IP, which definitely helps. But at the end of the day, to me, it's a good idea is what's going to break through the noise the most. Would you agree with that, or is it more the IP?
Well, before I answer that question, what do you think my answer is going to be?
Yes, yeah,
you take a look at the games that I make.
Yes,
right. Like I've worked on
absolutely.
Marvel and DC games. I've worked on World of Warcraft games, but I love building my own worlds. I love building a great game that's going to have a cool story to go with it that you get to be a part of, and we can connect and build together. That's something that lights me up. Not that obviously Marvel is awesome. Disney is awesome. Star Wars is awesome. Like those things are great. And so, of course, when I say you've got to break the noise, one of the tools that is available to you to break the noise is have an IP that people already care about, right? So that is absolutely a valuable tool. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. Like I do not, and I'm living proof of that, right? We have a lot of very successful games. Our IP are all home rolled, and we love doing it.
Yeah, those two, like I said, just came to mind, and that they happen to be large, large IPs. It's just I feel like in this day and age, and you said it, like it seems like it's just getting harder and harder to break through to get somebody to notice it. And I mean, again, not being a designer, like how do you do that? Like, how do you get somebody to notice your good idea? Aside from just, we just put more money into marketing, right? Like,
that's a trap. That's a trap.
Yeah, that's got to be something that like every designer really, really wrestles with.
Well, I'm glad that you asked that here, because I'll tell you the best answer to that I have is circling back to the very first thing we started talking about, which is community. Because when you actually want to break the noise, what the thing that does it best in my experience is that you demonstrate over time that you care about a given community and you work to serve and add value to that community. Right. So this is, just to make like if you're out there, you don't have a name to yourself, you don't know it, you don't have anything on, like hey, start a podcast, start creating stuff for people, start talking about the passion, start sharing cool stuff, run local little game events, build, show up at conventions and run games and help volunteer for people, right? Build all that stuff. And then when you come up with your game and you can show it to people, say, hey, I know you really like these other things, or you kept coming to my game nights and I know you love playing Ascension. I have a game that's like Ascension, but it combined with this other thing. Come check it out, right? And play it. And you can absolutely build a community over time, and then you can get them, and then they'll support you and they'll back your Kickstarter, or they'll do your, right? That in my way, that's what I always sort of advise people. It's not looking to be an overnight success and have everybody just show up at your door and knock down, right? It's about building a career and building a lifetime. And that's the stuff that anyone can do. And it's a fulfilling way to do it. It's not just like trying to piggyback off of an IP or just ride whatever the newest, hottest mechanical wave is of, everybody's making whatever, these kinds of games. I make one of those kinds of games. It's doing stuff that you genuinely love, finding the people that love that, adding value to those people over time. And then when you create something that's cool, and then again, what you create matters too, right? That you create something that actually does add value, that is somewhat unique, that has a good pitch. I talk when I teach my course, I teach a course on also called Think Like a Game Designer. We're going to be running another one in April. It's a very intensive version of the same thing where we walk everybody through it over 12 weeks, help them with their designs, help them move through all the way till we have them pitch their game to publishers. And part of what it is like, look, you want to have a great elevator pitch. You want to have something where if I do earn your attention, right, by serving the community, if I earn your attention, then I got to be able to get you very quickly with like, okay, that sounds amazing, right? Like, SoulForge Fusion, we have algorithmically generated one-of-a-kind decks that you can customize and battle online or in person with your same unique deck, right? Boom, quick, right? There's a lot of other things I could say there, but I need to get your attention really fast and go. Right, Ascension Tactics combines the best of deck building games with the strategy of tactical miniatures games. Okay, go. Right, and then I can, if you're interested, now there's a lot more of both those projects than just what I told you, but I'm able to give you some there. So it's a lot of different steps here. So it's like that building community and serving a community over time is like the best and most important thing you do, because whether you want to make a game or you want to do anything you want to do, like building those relationships, genuine relationships over time really is just valuable. And then when you are trying to sell something, get attention. I don't care what it is. If it's a game, I mean, I did a lecture recently to the Wharton School of Business. I taught business school students these exact same principles. Doesn't matter if it's a game or a business or a book or whatever, or your podcast, right? You need to say, okay, what is it? How do I get you to understand what I'm trying to offer? And who specifically is this for? And you be very clear on that stuff, and you see those people light up when you make that offer. Now you know you've got something, and then they're going to tell their friends, and then that's going to spread without you having to spend marketing dollars or have a big IP or any of that.
Yeah, it brings me back to when we talked to Stephen Woolley from Team Covenant, and one of the things that he had told us is, like, I asked him like what one of the biggest things that he's learned in 10 plus years of them running their business, and one of the things that he said was know the value you bring, and be ruthless in that. And seek to help, seek to build relationships, and then just don't compromise. Like, know what you're doing, know who you are, and then just be ruthless in that, and don't compromise for clicks, for money, for anything, but just know who you are. Yeah. So it's refreshing to just hear that, echoed, and it's like, okay, well then that's got to be, like, for me, it boils down to just building relationships and show your community that you care about them, and then you will kind of get that in return. I mean, not guaranteed, but it just show that you care. So
yeah, it's a weird. So I had this sort of weird realization when I was younger, because as a gamer, there's this tendency to always think in terms of like EV, right? In terms of the expected value. Like, I'm going to do this so I can get this. I'm going to do this so I can get this. And you're always thinking about yourself in a game, like, how do I win? And the way to win at life is to stop thinking like that. Don't. Nobody wants to be around that guy, right? Yeah. You don't want to be the one that's. You need to actually think about. It's actually reverse the entire thing, right? Think about, how can I add value to the world around me, right? And what I care about is being, like, true to myself and being true to my own values. And then if you do that, it's amazing. You'll magically get all the things that you actually want, but you can't think about it the other way.
It's sorry, but it's funny you say that, because I have a son. My son's sick. Goodness, yeah, he's 6. He'll be 7 soon. But he I love my son so much, but I see so much of myself in him, and it's of course it's the bad parts in me that come out, right? And so one of the things that I'm trying to get through to him, he hates losing, okay, and then when he loses, it's everybody knows about it. Everybody, it's like, oh boy, everybody knows Nolan lost, and then he'll throw a big fit. And one thing I'm trying to get through to him, and and teach by example, right, is showing him, hey, it's okay. It's not about winning. It's fun to win, yes, but the most important thing is, again, showing people that, hey, nobody wants to be around this. Show them that you love them, and it's just something that I'm struggling. I, like every parent, struggles with,
yes,
but it's just something I'm seeing on the day to day. But yeah, it's just trying to show them this is what's going to be in life. What life's going to be like, bud.
Sorry, bud. Can't win them all. Yeah. Can't win them all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right. So Ascension Tactics, like it's got me very excited, right? And one of the things that I feel like a lot of people ask nowadays is there going to be a digital version, right? So I know you've got an Ascension does have a digital version. Will there be an Ascension Tactics digital version? And do you think now it's important that tabletop games also have a digital version, or is that just like a nice thing to have, but just not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary, but again, I just circle it all back to community, right? It's like one of those things that it all comes down to like how many different ways can you get people to engage? How many different ways can you get people to like build this into their lifestyle and build this and connect with your community or things, right? And so the difference of like, I can be playing this game when I'm sitting at home and I can still be playing against my friends. Like, so Ascension was like the first deck building game on app. As far as I know, ever, right? Like it was, maybe there was some small thing out there, but like it was the first one, and I was terrified. Right, Ascension was a huge success, launched in 2010, and in 2011 we launched the Ascension app on iPhone, and I was afraid that I was going to destroy and cannibalize my entire market. Right, instead of spending $40 for a box of Ascension, you could spend at the time $5. Now it's free. You could buy it, download an iOS or Android, and why would you ever spend $40? But I was like, I don't know, this is really cool. I want to do it. Like, this is my bias is always like, I want to do the cool new thing. And so we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. And of course, what happened is the exact opposite, right? As soon as I launched it, the sales of the physical game took off even more because now people could try the game. They could access the game. They could enjoy it. They could bring their friends in. Oh, hey, check this thing out, right? Come play. And then so it became a symbiotic relationship. So I believe that I know that relationship exists. So if you can launch a digital version of your game, it very likely will increase the sales of your physical game. Do you need it? No. And let me tell you, do not take on this burden lightly. It is very hard, very expensive, very difficult to make software. Like making physical games is hard enough. Making software is even harder in my experience. And then if you're doing both, you now have the problems of both. So like everything of like my designs have to take into account both. So like we're already building that. So we have that for Ascension. We have it for Shards of Infinity. I've already announced. So SoulForge Fusion today, you can scan your decks into your online account and play on Tabletop Simulator. But we are in the middle of developing a full-fledged app for SoulForge Fusion that will allow you to play on your PC, on phones, and all the whole thing. So Ascension Tactics. So to answer your answer about Ascension Tactics, the answer is yes, I'd love to, but not yet. I'm very focused on what we're doing now. Right, we're building Ascension Tactics Inferno, which is coming to Kickstarter. In the 21st of February, and then so the physical version and advancing Ascension Tactics is our biggest priority in terms of that. But the digital side, it's SoulForge Fusion for at least the next year of just focusing on that. So then we may circle back on Tactics.
Sure. Okay. Awesome. All right. Before we get to the card of the week, I've got one other question I want to ask you about Magic and community building. Okay. So I mean, there's so many things you could get to about Magic, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you and get your opinion, especially from the standpoint of a designer, was the whole Universes Beyond project. Okay. For those that aren't familiar, Universes Beyond is essentially other universes, other IPs coming into Magic the Gathering and Magic making special cards, for lack of a better term. Okay. One of the things that they're doing, I think it's this year, is they're bringing in Final Fantasy as one of the universes that they're going to be featuring. And with Final Fantasy does have its own Final Fantasy trading card game. Okay. So, Justin, in your opinion, what do you think of any game bringing in another IP that already has a game similar to the one that they're bringing in does to the community around both of those games? Is that a positive thing? Is it a negative thing, or does it really matter?
Ooh, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think it's it's a there's like I've got my like business person hat on, my designer hat on, and my player hat on. Right, each one feels very differently about this. Right, like there's a certain part of me as a player, as a Magic player specifically, that's like feels like my game's getting corrupted by these other IP. Like, what the hell are Transformers doing battling against Teferi, right? Or what? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So
it's awesome.
So they're right. No, and that's exactly right. That's the other piece of it. For some people, like, that is awesome. Like, what the hell are you? Why are you so stressed about it? What are you like? People love this. People love Final Fantasy. People love Magic. I like chocolate. I love peanut butter. Let's put them together. What am I missing, right? Like, what's the problem, right? That is super fair. That's super fair. And I think, like, I know, like, I have a lot of friends at Wizards. Like, there was a lot of people that were very, very against any of these, like, IP bleeding for many, many years, anything along those lines. And then finally it broke through, and it's like, oh, actually turns out it's hugely successful, right? Like, people love this stuff because, of course, they love they love the things they love. So you're giving them more of the things that they love, right? And so insofar as, like, I don't want to be playing with those cards, don't play with those cards. Don't buy those cards. Yeah. If you love the Final Fantasy trading card game and the mechanics that are there, you don't have to play the Magic Final Fantasy set. But you can if you want to. So I think there's, like, this interesting dynamic. And Magic and trading card games have, like, a little bit of a difference there in that oftentimes you feel like you have to buy new cards to be competitive, or you have to, like, participate in something. But I think for the most part, for most people, most of the time, if you don't like it, don't buy it. I promise you they'll stop making it if they don't know, nobody buys it. Yeah. But if somebody does and people like it and they want to say, yeah, man, I want to know who wins in a fight. That was actually the thing when we worked on the Versus System game, it was just Marvel and DC, right, battling each other. And it was just basically who wins in a fight. Okay, cool. Like, Batman versus Wolverine. What happens? Who wins in a fight? Let's go. And we just, like, would work on that stuff all the time. It's like, it was fun and cool. Like, I grew up with those characters. It's fun to get to be the one that decides that. So I think being able to let people play in the IP that they love and the games that they love overall is a net positive. Obviously there are, with the little caveats of, like, the purists and the people you're just kind of like, no, I want to play my game the way I played it. But for the most part, you know what? Let's go.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, if you want to play the game your way, then play the game your way. Like, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. So, all right. Now,
that's the thing that bothers me a lot of the time. That just to finish that thought, it's like a lot of people get very, very, very upset if other people want to play a game differently than they do. And it's like, just, it's okay. You play your way, let them play their way. I want everybody to be happy. That's, like, what we're here to do. We're playing games.
Right. Now, the last question here. One of the things I love your podcast, and I love the premise. One of the things that I've always struggled with. I'm very analytical. My day job is I'm an engineer, so my entire day is always problem solving and thinking through how do I fix this. Getting into something like this, I have had to work at being creative. And I gotta tell you, I love it. I love so much getting to use that side of my brain. And initially, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And I was very hesitant that I'm like, I don't know if I can actually be creative, but I believe it now.
We're going to make a game.
Yeah. How do you help tell somebody that? How would you talk to me when I was at that point of I don't know if I can be creative or not? What would you tell somebody like me?
Yeah, this is the thing I'm probably most passionate about right now, is helping people exactly like you and exactly like people in that situation, because that's who I was, right? When I told my story of coming as a pro Magic player, I was super analytical. I still am super analytical. That's just, like, how I think. I like to break down problems and solve problems. That's just how I approach the world. And so you can do exactly the same thing for creativity. There's no magical creative people out there. There's no secret fairy dust that you don't have that they do. What it is it's a step-by-step process. It's a step-by-step process. I break it all down in my book. I break it down for free in my podcast. Break it down, like, it's just, you follow what I call the core design loop. where you go through the step-by-step process. How do you get inspiration? How do you get ideas? You can make that very rigid, very formulaic. What parameters do you work in? How do you brainstorm? How do you take your core idea and turn it into a whole mess of ideas, something that's actually executable? How do you prototype and test your idea? How do you use that test data to feed back into the cycle to then modify your project and move it accordingly? And it's just this process of developing hypotheses, finding efficient ways to test them, circling back and bringing it forward. So it is as rigid as, engineering. It's just a matter of people don't know what the programming language is, right? They don't know what the steps are. And once you know them, honestly, none of it's super complicated. I spend a lot of time teaching people, but I'm not teaching anything, again, no secret fairy dust. Like, I give away all the information for free. The best things are like surrounding yourself with people that do it and practicing, because what's really hard is getting yourself to put creative work out there, right? People don't realize how difficult it is, because what you're going to create, what you think you want and what you create are not the same. What you create is going to be garbage. Okay. I'm going to give you that secret right now. The first prototype sucks. It always sucks. And it's going to continue to suck. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. My first prototypes still suck, right? You got to be willing to let your ego aside and be able to work through that process of putting yourself out there, taking in criticism, not like lashing out at those people, taking that in, being able to circle it back through and move through that process. And so that part, a lot of the training that I give to people is not just about the principles, but the practice and the iterative loops that you have to go through to really do it well. So anybody can do it. It's not complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated. So if you want to do it and are willing to put in the work, anybody can be creative, 100%.
Yeah, every time I hit that upload or schedule button, I always get a little nervous, but every time I do it, the next time gets a little bit easier. So you just got to start and you just got to keep doing it. So, all right. Justin has been so kind to talk about this week's card of the week. Jim's gonna love this card so much because great. Jim loves this color. Justin, what is this week's card of the week for us?
Card of the week is Oath of Druids.
All right, so I've got the card pulled up. It's an enchantment. Man, what is this? I don't know what the set is from. But it's an enchantment for 100 green. Says during each player's upkeep, if that player controls fewer creatures than target opponent, the player may reveal cards from his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. The player puts that creature card into play and all other revealed cards into his or her graveyard. Okay, yeah, this you can cheat. What did you cheat into play with this card, Justin?
Yes.
What Eldrazi did you cheat into play?
Yes. This is before the days of Eldrazi, but yes, so this is, there's a joy of playing at a top Magic level, and winning a tournament is one of those joys, and that's great. But the biggest joy in my mind is getting people to ban a card, because it means, like, not only did you beat the other players, but you beat the designers, you beat everybody. And so I was able to win Pro Tour Houston with Oath of Druids, and the card was banned shortly thereafter. And the card that I got into play was Cognivore. Cognivore is a blue 6 flying blue creature that has a power and toughness equal to the number of instants. I think it's instants and sorceries in your discard pile. And so my whole deck was counter spells and control cards and things to control the game. And then just these, and then the Cognivores that I could just crush my opponents with. So basically, if you ever successfully got a creature on the board, I would just win the game in the next turn or two. And if you didn't, then I would just slowly grind you out. And I had treetop villages, so I could activate and turn them into creatures and attack you and take you down that way if I needed to. And I also had Living Witches, which is a really fun card in that deck that I could pull. I had a variety of like specialty creatures I could pull in if I really wanted to from my sideboard. So I love the games that, like, the cards that really help you break the game up and then just like completely change things upside down. And so Oath of Druids will always have a special place in my heart for that reason.
Were there a lot of people in the tournament playing that deck, or was that deck that you kind of thought up on your own?
It was a deck I thought up on my own, and it was actually a funny story. So several of the people you mentioned earlier that are now, not only obviously lifelong friends, but also designers, Rob Doherty, Darwin Castle, and I were all part of Team Your Move Games. We had tested for that event together. And this is very unusual, we all played different decks in the tournament, right? So usually as a team, you work together, you test together, you figure out what the best deck is. And we all
and then you
decided that we all had different decks. We use an advocacy system when we were testing. So like you would be like the advocate for a deck. You try to make the best version of it to break it within the system, and then everybody would work together. And usually you coalesce, okay, no, your deck's really good. We did. So Rob played the black reanimated deck, right? It was like brought in giant creatures out of the discard pile. Darwin played the kind of green black kind of just good stuff advantage kind of deck, and I played the Cognivore Oath deck. And we, at the end of the Swiss rounds at Porto Houston, I was the first seed, Rob was the second seed, and Darwin was the third seed going into the top 8.
That is awesome.
Story
that
gets
is
better.
So cool.
Story gets better. We go into the top 8. Every single one of us sweeps our opponents. Not a single game lost from any of us. Wow. Not a single game lost from any of us. We go into the semifinals. I get paired against somebody else. I sweep him. Not a single game lost. Rob and Darwin play against each other. They go to maximum number of games. Rob finally beats Darwin. Then Rob and I play in the finals, go to the maximum number of games, and I finally beat Rob. And we end in seeds 1, 2, and 3 at the end of the tournament. It is, as far as I know, to this day, the most dominant performance of any team in history. We didn't lose a game to anybody but each other, and we all played different decks in that tournament.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
That is awesome.
Wow.
Man, that is so
Rob
cool.
Rob and I were rooming together for that tournament. And you know how you like joke with your friends? You ever been to a match where you're like, okay, man, we're going to get the top 2 trophies and we're going to have them in our room at the end of the night. You're like, yeah, dude, we're totally going to do that. And we totally
That is so cool. What? That's crazy. So this deck, looking at those cards, today it brings me to that, like it would be an is it list. That's just what my mind goes to. I feel like Jim, you hate green, but for some reason I think you would probably like that deck.
Honestly, I'd play it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd play that deck.
Yeah. This deck, it only leaned into green just to cheat the fact that it didn't have any creatures or really green cards. I think the only green cards in the deck were Oath of Druids and Pernicious Deed, so you could just like clear the board with it. So it was a very very blue centric deck.
I like Pernicious Deed. I have Pernicious.
That's always been my play style.
Yep. All right. Well, that is this week's card of the week, Oath of Druid. Justin, thank you for that. And you know what? As we wrap up here, Justin, can you tell our audience where they can find you and your content on the internet?
Yeah, so there's quite a few places. So stoneblade.com has all my games. And if you want to be participating in the Ascension Tactics Inferno Kickstarter, there's a link right there to follow it. There's a day 1 reward. Anybody that backs us on day 1 gets their name in the rulebook. Tons of cool stuff to participate in there. You can find me at Twitter at Justin_Gary. And if you want to follow the Think Like a Game Designer stuff, you can go to thinklikeagamedesigner.com. Or search for it in a podcast. It's also available at any bookstore you go to. And so all of that stuff, you want to learn to become a game designer, I give all of that stuff away for free in the podcast, and excited to connect. Also links from Stoneblade. You can go directly to our Stoneblade Discord. Myself and my team are always there. So it's a great way to just chat with us and directly get engaged.
Yeah, I'm in quite a few Discords, but I always like going to them and just seeing what's going on. I do love the Stoneblade Discord, and I always like any Discord where I can go and then just play some of their games with people, like over webcam or just online. It's always great. So guys, definitely go check out their Discord, and definitely you guys should go listen to the Think Like Game Designer podcast. I've learned a lot listening to that podcast, and you will too. So don't forget to check that out. Justin, thank you so much for being with us today. I had a lot of fun, and enjoy yourself. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. That was crazy. That was fun. Like I said, was nervous. In fact, I felt so silly. I felt like there was one question in particular that I felt really silly asking about a good idea over an IP, and he was like, "Well, what do you think?" Was like, yeah, but you know what though, Jim? Like, I'm finding it very interesting and very fun with all these interviews. It's getting us good experience and just talking to all these different people and and I think, at least for me, I can speak for, it's making me more and more comfortable talking to all these honestly really important people in this space. Like Justin Gary, to me, is just one of those people who's been around for a long time and designing some really, really great games. And that conversation was just a blast.
I love when he got pretty philosophical about stuff as well.
Dude, I thought he was joking.
Yeah.
I thought he was joking. But I was like, dude, that's awesome. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Well, because it's like, I felt really weird because I'm like, I think about these things too. And he's like, actually, I'm right there with you. I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah. So really, honestly, I'm excited to go to Gen Con and talk to him and meet him in person.
And honestly, while we were talking to him, it was kind of just like we knew him. Like for me, it was just a feeling of like, we've known this person for years.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is kind of weird.
Well, and you know what though? One of my favorite things about that entire talk was confirmation that what we're doing is we're doing the right thing. We're on the right path. When he kept going back to community, and community being the bedrock, the foundation of pretty much anything in this space. Yeah. It like, to me, that just solidified everything that we're doing here. And it was just so great to hear that, you know what, this really is what's important. It's really not about the games. It really is about these connections, those relationships, and the communities that are forming around all of these really insignificant things, right? Because it's what you said from the get-go. It's the experiences that we're having around these games, around the table, the journey that we're having with all these different people. And I'm so excited with talking to more and more different people. We're bringing all these other people along this journey with us. And it was just so great. So I had so much fun with that. And I can't wait to talk to more people. It's just so cool. It's a lot of fun. So, all right, before we get out of here, Jim, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram at Jim Morgan, HNH.
You guys can find me on Twitter at _DJ Campbell and on Instagram at Daniel.G.Campbell. Head to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com. Find links to all of our social platforms there, as well as our YouTube. Pretty much everything is there. A lot of fun. I had so much fun with this conversation and cannot wait to get to the next one. So that's all we got for you guys this week. And we'll catch you in the next episode. All right, see you, everybody.
Take care.